People who used to not believe in the paranormal but do know what experience changed your mind. I always wanted to believe but never had any experience of my own to allow me to until one day I was home alone and as plain as day heard someone stomp up to my basement steps to the floor I was on. I was sitting maybe 12 feet away from the steps and I was frozen as soon as I heard them. I was watching closely and the sound got all the way to the top of the steps, but no one was there. My cat was sleeping on the couch adjacent to me. He woke up suddenly and stared right at the stairs too. He heard it too, so that's how I knew I wasn't crazy. It was wild to experience. I wouldn't say I didn't believe, but I wasn't a full believer. I was in the middle ground. Then a few years ago I moved into my new house. I'm in my mid-40s, so I've essentially gone my entire life with zero paranormal experiences. It started out as weird how I think ghosts live here, but I never felt they were harmful. They were just there. I couldn't even give a specific example, but I just knew I wasn't alone. Then the dog started acting weird at night. He'd start looking at the ceiling like there was something there. Happened a few times a week. Then I'd be in bed and I'd feel something walk across the bed, thinking it was the dog, but nothing was there. This happened all the time. Doors would close. Strangely, lights would flicker, but the constant was their footsteps across the bed. For the first a year or so I never said anything to my husband. I for sure thought he'd think I was crazy. Then one night he bolts up in bed and was like, "Did you feel that it was the footsteps?" We both realized we'd been experiencing the same thing and both thought we were crazy. The clincher for me, though, was when my dog woke me one night to go for a pee. I let him out and was watching him through the peephole in the door. I very clearly saw a man and a woman dressed in Victorian-era clothing standing together looking at something in my hedges. It was like 2 a.m. I took a step back and was like, whoa, obviously half asleep, and did I just see that? Then went back to look again, and sure enough, they were still there. I never seen them again since, but I know for sure they were there. I know without a doubt there is some sort of spur it in this house, but I also feel like it's friendly, so not worried about it now when something weird happens. My husband and I am like, oh, the ghosts are active tonight. My sister and I were getting ready to go out one day. I was doing my makeup in front of a large mirror, and in my periphery I saw her come into the room and stand in the background watching me get ready. After about 30 seconds I asked her, "Are you ready?" but she didn't reply. I was still looking at myself, but I could see that she hadn't moved. I repeated the question and still no response. Finally I asked, "What are you doing? Why won't you answer me?" and turned to face her. As I looked toward her in the mirror, I saw an unfamiliar woman standing there who looked nothing like my sister. By the time I finished turning around, she was gone and the room was empty. There's no way I imagined it. I had seen her walk and she stayed there for about 2 minutes and I saw her very clearly as I turned. The fact that I actually talked to her says it all. A few months later, my great-grandma and great-aunt who lived there both separately described the same woman watching them in other parts of the house. I only told my mom, not them, so she was as shocked as I was when they talked about it. None of us had ever believed in the paranormal, and none of us ever told ghost stories. 2 experiences of my current work place. Old-ass building renovated into something new. Had a few previous staff mention they've seen a woman in white at the top of the stairs or walking through the kitchen. Unlike you whatever until the day everyone was in bed. One staff upstairs, one at the table with me, and I turned around and very briefly saw a face in the dark conservatory. My heart could have leaped out of my chest. I made someone check with me just in case it was an intruder. Nothing. Doors locked. No one's there. 100%. First thought was not OMG ghost. It was OMG intruder. We have meds and vulnerable people, so when I say we checked. I was also walking out of the kitchen. Another time I felt someone tap my shoulder. When I turned, there's literally no one behind me or even in the room. Nothing else has really happened since, though some PM/night staff did report a few strange sightings, but not for a while. I'm not like early day Ramberger carrying holy water in a water pistol and screaming at a torch believer. Not a dig. I'm a huge fan of the Ghoul Boys, but it has made me believe it's possible because I cannot explain these events. When I was about 13, my mom's sisters and I went to go visit our great-grandma and grandma. It was right after Christmas and we were going to stay for the weekend and then head back home. Well, the day came for us to leave and Mom said that we had to stay one more night. Well, me being a bratty 13-year-old that just wants to get home to some Wi-Fi, I threw a big fit and ran up to the room my sisters and I were sharing. I got into the room and no one was there, so I closed the door, threw myself under the covers, popped my headphones in and blasted my music. I don't remember how much time passed now, but it wasn't long. If I were to guess, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I all of a sudden feel someone jump on the bed right next to me. Now I'm still pissed and I thought one of my sisters came into the room to bother me, so I ripped the covers off me to yell at them, and no one is there. I scrambled off the bed, took a quick look around to make sure it wasn't my sister's, and bolted. I didn't even tell any of them until we got back home because I was too afraid to speak about it. I have had various things happen to cause me to question how straightforward what we know of our the world is, but I lived in what felt like a haunted house. It's a bit long story. I lived for a while in a very old house. It was the oldest house in the area and had started off as a small cottage with various extensions and developments throughout its history, but even the newest sections were still at least 100 years old. It is a detached house. For some of the time I lived there alone and had up to 3 other friends living there at other times. One time I was sat in the living room. At this point no one else lived with me, and I heard my bike fall over in the room next door. I kept it inside, leaning on a wall near the back door. Initially, I thought nothing of it, thinking that the handlebars had turned and it slid over when I came to find my bike. It was a couple of meters from the wall and on its side as if it had been flung away from the wall. A month later, I spoke to the owner of the house about it, and he had had the same thing happen to him. With a motorcycle will form the same wall, I would often find lights and taps left on that I was sure I had switched off. They never turned themselves on when I could see them though, so I could never be sure it wasn't me. I would often hear noises in the house even when I was the only one there. I slept in a room at the top of the house, was 3 stories, and I would get home from work before my housemates. Often I would be up in my room and clearly hear one of them come home and run up the stairs. I would shout downstairs to say hello and get no reply, then explore only to discover the doors still all locked and no one but me in the house. My friend woke up feeling himself pinned into his bed at night. He said it felt as if a person was holding him down by his arms. He has not experienced night terrors before or after living in this house. We looked after a Rottweiler dog for a while there. It was a fearless and, to be honest, dangerous dog, or at least fearless until it lived there. Sometimes she would cower in a corner or press up against us for comfort while staring at something we couldn't see. Sometimes her stare would be following this invisible thing moving through the room. There were all sorts of odd happenings in this house, a lot of them easily written off as nothing due to the fact there were 4 of us. Have said the house is called Poor Man's House because it was purple with a little tower. At first everything was normal. I've been living there for 2 weeks when a neighbor came around to speak, and at some point he, in the middle of the convoy, pointed out to me that every family or single person who had been living there moved out in 1 week because very weird things were going on. There are like lights going out at random times, noises and scratches, and some rooms went very cold all of a sudden. Also, screams were heard. I first thought that's okay, haven't heard anything yet, but skipped to 1 week later when I went to the kitchen to make food, and all of a sudden I hear very heavy steps at the 2nd floor. First, I thought that maybe something fell. Then I went to the 2nd floor and saw nobody, but felt a bit colder than they're used to. Then I went back downstairs, left the light on. When I went to the 2nd floor, the lights were off. I was like, wow, what the hell? I left lights on, thinking to myself. Then I asked if there's anybody here. I heard steps again from the kitchen. Was brave enough to go back there. I was shaken up by what I just witnessed because I never believed in such things. Skip an hour later, when I'm in the middle of us goes round, all of a sudden my pa shuts off without any air/warnings or electricity problems. Then I had a feeling that somebody was watching me. I slowly turned around, but there was nobody. I started crying because I was legit scared that it was gonna harm me. Skip to the next morning. Everything was normal until midnight when I woke up to very violent scratching, steps, and growling. After that I started to cry until I fell asleep. The next day I went to my boss and asked if he knew anything about this house. Oh boy, he had a story to tell me. First, the thing he said was that it was a mini hospital in World War II where soldiers died, and later on it worked as a hospice, and finally was a kindergarten where the little boy was suffocated to death. He asked me if I saw somebody, as he knew all along. I told them everything I'd heard. Then he tells me to move out and never look back. I don't have any stories of my own, but 2 from people close to me. My best friend from grade school was messing with an Ouija board and apparently communicating with a spirit. He asked what the spirit's name was, and immediately someone called his house and filled up the answering machine with panic, jabbering in a language he'd never heard before. This was around 2 a.m. the night my mom died. She was talking to someone she saw in the corner of her hospital room. No one else in the room saw anyone there. She knew that people were going to take her that night. This was witnessed by the hospital staff and my stepdad, who is not the type to make up like that. I worked for American Cruise Lines at the beginning of the year. Last year, when I got on board, things just could not go right. The crew couldn't get along. Then bad and weird things started happening. One worker took a picture when we were tied up alongside another boat, sister boat. There was one bedroom light on in the other boat. In the room was a person, but it almost looked like that person had a wolf's head. Then my physical the experience came about. My shift was coming to an end. It was maybe 11:30 p.m. when I was doing my final walk around. There was a woman on the second floor, totally naked old lady, probably 70s 80s, playing with a door handle. I thought to myself, there is no way this woman is this drunk. I turned around to find somebody to help her. I found my boss. We went back to help her, but she was gone, nowhere to be found. I feel like if she was that drunk and playing with the doorknob in that manner, she wouldn't just walk right back to her bedroom. Suddenly becoming conscious of the boss, and I went upstairs to the camera system to try to find where she had gone in case she had gotten lost. No proof of her anywhere, not on any of the cameras, is not anywhere to be found. So the next few days happened. On a Tuesday, I am trying to find this lady, maybe point out to everyone which guessed it was, never saw her again. A friend and not playing with an Ouija the board all weekend in the basement. It slowly started moving in figure 8 and sped up. My friend and I both at the same time felt heat go from our fingers up to our forearms when we both let go at the same time because it freaked us out. This was pre-internet and I didn't know what figure 8 meant. It is a malevolent spirit named Zoo. Also worked with a woman who had a freaked out experience with an Ouija board. Her and her friend, both females, were just getting nasty words and responses from it. Got fed up and put it on top of the fridge as they were sitting in the kitchen. About 15 minutes later, it flew off the fridge and into the kitchen floor. It seriously freaked them out and they got rid of it. I have an amazing one for this. When I was around 9 to 10, I was camping with a friend's family, and one night while I was sleeping, someone I didn't know to unzip the tent looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Do you have a hammock tarp?" Besides the fact that I have no idea what the hell that is, this dude was absolutely generals, like Shaquille O'Neal but fatter. Later, while I and my friend were peeing, yes, we peed together. I was 10. Shut up. He brought up that his dead uncle died in a car crash with his friends and used to fish around here, and upon seeing a photo of him, it was the exact dude who came into the tent. Creepy as hell. Thanks for listening. The subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more things you don't want to know. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories.